Hello there. Welcome back to the Sky Guys podcast. We are now into our wrapping up Andor coverage mode here. We are taking a trip back to memory lane here, as Diego Luna and Tony Gilroy have said you should rewatch Rogue One after finishing Andor. We did that this week, and we're here to talk about it. I'm one of your hosts, Mike Phillips. Pecans unfortunately could not be with us here. He is still trying to get his way off of Jeddah, but Nick Fraietta is here with us. Nick, how are you?
Doing good. I watched Rogue One 2 weeks ago, and right after the finale. I
Yes,
watched it directly after, so I did not watch again for this, but I watched it 2 weeks ago.
you did exactly what Diego Luna wanted you to do. As soon as Andor was over, you went right to Rogue One.
Yep, I did.
Yep. And we do have a fill in here with us today. I want to thank the great Phil Fraietta for coming aboard here to join us for this journey here. Phil, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. Very excited about this spot.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, we didn't get a chance to check with you during season two of Andor. So, what did you think about the final season?
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
The whole show was phenomenal. I was on in season one, and I think season two was even better. It's a good. I think you can make a good argument that episodes 8 and 9 of season two are the best content, or certainly some of the best content Star Wars has ever put out.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, that is stretch. The last 5 episodes were all rated 9.5 or higher on IMDb. The first time our show's ever done that with our 5 episode stretch is nuts.
It was great. Yeah, I particularly liked the Gorman arc, but the whole thing was just fantastic.
Absolutely. Here, we'll go get to what we're talking about here. Pete's not here, Nick. I'll tell everybody. People want to subscribe to the Sky Guy. Can do so Apple Podcasts, Google Play, TuneIn, Spotify, Amazon, all usual suspects. Simply search for the Sky Guys for your podcast platforms for episodes there here. And it's gonna be a minute if we have another live action show, but we do have a lot of stuff going on here. So we gotta make sure you're subscribed.
You got to be subscribed. It's only a button away.
It is.
Click away.
And speaking of what else is a button away, how can people follow on social media?
At Sky Guys Podcast all over, and at Sky Guys Pod at Gmail if you want to email the pod.
Yep. And I'm going to go to our social media comment of the week. This is from TikTok, a discussion last week about the lack of Darth Vader or Tarkin or Palpatine and Andor. This content some Star Wars facts. An interesting counterpoint here. Says the only downside of having Vader and Andor is that you watch all of Andor and then Rogue One. His presence in Rogue One feels out of place. And I think that would go extra for people who aren't familiar with Star Wars or giving Andor a go. It's all quote unquote normal people. And suddenly in the culminating movie, there's this magic sword wielding powerhouse that they've never seen before. So, Phil, what do you think about this?
Um, well, I think it's pretty obvious that when you rewatch Rogue One, the Vader inserts are there kind of just because Lucasfilm was understandably afraid about making a Star Wars property that doesn't have any reference to the originals or the Force or Jedi's or whatnot. So I get that. At the same time, I'm not sure Darth Vader's a such a culturally widespread and significant character that I'm just not sure there's anybody out there who's watching Andor who doesn't know who Darth Vader is. I can understand maybe you don't know some of the more obscure characters, but Darth Vader is a just pervasive figure in pop culture.
Yeah, and Nick, my counter to that would also be like if you look at the buildup of the rebellion throughout Andor, like they're getting stronger and stronger and becoming more like intrusive to things. It would make sense that now there's like, okay, we got to a point there where like the plans of this thing have been stolen and now there's chaos going on at the Death Star. Now, like it's got the attention of upper management. Now Vader's to get personally involved in what's going on here.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Completely agree with you. In Andor, it's just a leak, if you will.
Yeah.
Where in Rogue One, it's they know that the rebels have the leak or know how to get the leak or something, or they understand that there's something going on. So it's like you said, upper management getting involved, if you will.
Yeah, that's also why we get Tarkin in the movie too, because Tarkin,
Right.
we'll talk about this in a few minutes, how like Tarkin is clearly over Krennic's like BS with the Death Star project.
Right. And you're not getting Palpatine for reasons we've discussed.
Yeah.
Is he more or less doesn't exist at this time period.
Nah, he's off doing his own thing. And Nick, let's get some Star Wars news here. Got a little more Andor cleanup here, it looks like.
Yeah. So Tony Gilroy says that he retconned the K2SO origin story because he's sympathetic to the canon. Excuse me, because while he's sympathetic to the canon, he was annoyed that someone else wrote the origin story, and he decided to change it.
Which I know,
Uh,
like, I
if put it this way, if the show wasn't good, I'd be like, "Is he kidding?" But since the show was good, I don't care. It's fine.
I mean, like, I'm not gonna get personally offended if like he rewrote something that somebody wrote in a comic book afterwards. He had a better idea than what the comic book did.
Right. If the show was bad, we would be having a different conversation right now.
Yeah, for sure. Phil, did that bother? Were you aware that they had changed the K2SO origin story from like what had originally been established?
I was, and I think it goes back a little bit to what I said just a few minutes ago. It's obvious if you listen to the Tony Gilroy interviews that he is um, less concerned with the Star Wars canon, with the original trilogy and whatnot. He's making a really a show about rebellions and how they've uh, typically started throughout history, and he's borrowing from major historical moments to do that. So it's not that surprising that he kind of wants control over his whole story. And I think that, and we're going to talk about this with Rogue One, but when you watch Rogue One, you can tell the parts that I know Gilroy was brought in kind of after the fact to clean it up, and you could tell. I think you can tell what he cleaned up and what is from the original script.
Yeah, for sure. And Nick, what else we got?
Disney moved Avengers Doomsday back 7 months from May of next year to December, which means it will no longer be competing with the new Mando movie that'll be out at the same time. Um,
We won.
yeah, and as a Star Wars fan, that's great. And as a Marvel fan, I'm excited too. I really like December releases for the movies. It's an exciting time of year with the holidays around, so I like that in every way. I think it's great. It's not like a long delay too. So if you're like a Marvel fan who's like disappointed, oh, they're gonna wait a whole other year. It's only 7 months, not that long. So it's good.
Yeah, I felt like that was rushing it the way they were trying to get it out for May of 26. So I feel like December 26 feels more realistic for what they're trying to
Yeah.
do.
And like I said, December's a good time. It's a
Yeah.
good time for movies.
And
That's when all the original Disney Star Wars movies were coming out when they first did it. Except for Solo, they all came out that time of year.
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, Mike, you probably know better, but aren't the May release dates and the December release dates the most coveted release dates in the movie calendar?
I'd say that and like around July 4th, usually the third spot.
All right, so doesn't it make sense then? Why would Disney want to roll two movies in at the same time? Makes sense to space them out.
Well, Disney's a little greedy.
Yeah, but they're gonna eat into their audience of each other if you do that. You know, the
Now Avengers is going head to head with Doom. Dune, sorry, not Doom.
That's
Dune.
not great either.
Yeah.
no, it's not great, but the movies are expensive, and you could have a situation, maybe a family of four can't go to multiple movies a month. So I think it makes sense to split them up.
Nick, how about Avengers Doomsday? We do the the Barbenheimer with Dune and Doomsday.
Maybe that might be a thing. I think there's another movie coming out around the same time as the Manda movie too.
Yeah.
It's a big movie. I know it's not a Disney one, but I think there's another big one. I just don't know off the top of my head what it is.
I'll look it up while you give us the next news item.
The next news item is that Andor ranked number 4 in streaming originals on the Nielsen streaming charts in the week of its release, and number 10 overall for that week, which is the last week of April. Over 721 million minutes of Andor were watched in that span. So Andor performed really well. Obviously had good reviews from critics and fans alike, and looks like people are actually watching it too, which is really, I guess, all that really matters, right?
Yeah, as long as people are watching it, and then like,
People are watching it and they like it. That's all that matters.
yeah. And I did look it up here. There is like nothing, like the closest thing to it right now is that DC has a placeholder slot the week after. So there's nothing really slotted there.
Oh, so no.
They're pretty clear right now.
Yeah.
Okay. And you got to this Battlefront situation also. This is getting wild on the internet.
Yeah, so the outcry has reached an all-time high for Star Wars Battlefront 3. To be clear, a new Battlefront 3, not the old 2005 Battlefront 2 sequel, a sequel to the 2017 Battlefront 2. People want it. Um, and it's a tremendous story. I mean, Battlefront 2 went from the lowest of lows to the highest of highs. It was the number one most downvoted comment in the history of Reddit was regarding this game before its release. And now the player base is at, I don't know if it's an all-time high, but pretty close to it. And it's people want the next game. They want another Battlefront game. People are all in on this game. It's a tremendous turnaround story. And hey, I mean, give the people what they want. You don't seem to think it'll happen though, Mike.
Yeah, it's interesting because I know EA is kind of getting out of the Star Wars business. I know that the Cal Kestis trilogy is the last one they're doing at this point, but with the outcry, Phil, maybe somebody else says, "Oh, like there's interest in this. Maybe we should pursue this project."
Yeah, that's kind of I think we're going to talk about that too. What is the future of Star Wars look like post Andor, or maybe that's what you guys are going to do next week. But I think that's all part of the same concern here with the Battlefront. You there's definitely going to be a renewed interest in the property, and Disney is going to try and take advantage of that. But you don't want them to dilute it either. So I think it's going to be a difficult line to toe.
Yeah, Nick, we
Yeah.
have to be careful here. This has not become like the Morbius thing with Sony, where he's Morbid time, then he doesn't really release the movie, nobody buys it.
Yeah, and you could even think to yourself like, well, VA is not going to do it because it seems like I guess they don't really have their exclusive rights anymore to Star Wars games, considering Outlaws was made by Ubisoft last year. But um, you could say to yourself, oh, maybe the old Battlefront team will do it, but that team doesn't even exist anymore. They haven't existed for a while, which is why EA had the rights to begin with. So if you're going to have another game, it's probably going to have to be EA.
Yeah. So that's it for the news this week.
Yes.
All right, so let's get to what we're talking about here today. So we rewatched Rogue One after Andor here. We did what Diego Luna and Tony Gilroy want us to do. And I'll admit, this is my third time watching this movie for the podcast. I did the movie rankings, and we did it before Rogue One. Nick remembers that one here. So I'll start with you, Nick. How does this hold up now? Like on like at least like your second watching since like we started this pod.
So I want you to rephrase the question a little more specifically. Do you mean how does it hold up in a rewatch in general, or how does it hold up in a rewatch after seeing Andor?
I'll go with the latter. How does it hold up on a rewatch after seeing Andor?
So it's interesting because it's significantly better yet significantly worse at the same time.
Yeah.
It's better because I know the motivations of the characters a little bit more. I understand what just happened prior, which just makes it feel that much more important. But I think it's worse, and it's not no one's fault in this, but obviously just the pacing's significantly different because it's a movie versus a show in a way that I don't like because it feels so rushed. But again, it's a movie. It's supposed to be over in 2 hours, not 40 hours, however long Andor was. I mean, it wasn't that long. Andor was about 20 hours, I think, total. But it suffers from the pacing, but again, that's expected. Now, the negative that I see though is the writing's nowhere near as good as the writing was in Andor. But again, when you're dealing with a movie versus a show, it's somewhat expected. So it's worse in that sense, like pacing and writing, but it is better in the sense of the story holds that much more importance after watching Andor and seeing how they got to that point.
Yeah, and Phil, you brought this point up earlier that we know this movie was in development hell when it was being made, and then they bring in Tony Gilroy last minute to fix the movie, basically. And I know there was infamous scenes in the trailer that never made the film because Gilroy said they were useless. So I could see the writing where he wrote versus like where the original script was kept, and there was stuff going on there. There's rumors about like what the original ending was intended for Cassian, for example, but I thought like having this context of the show helped because like especially getting to characters like Cassian and Krennic, like seeing them like more dialed in gives you a different perspective on what they're thinking throughout the movie.
I agree, but I also agree with what Nick said. So on the one hand, it makes the Rogue One experience more rewarding because I have a better character arc for Cassian and I have a better character arc for Krennic. So I understand their motivations, their thought processes a little bit more than I understand the first time. However, where it gets a little chunky is the fact that Cassian is not the main character of Rogue One. Jyn Erso is, and Jyn Erso has no backstory whatsoever in Andor. So her backstory feels rushed. So I don't know if Andor needed to do this, but in a perfect world, you know how they gave us the Clea and Luthen backstory
Yep.
episode?
Yep.
A Saw and Jin episode probably would have gone a long way to helping the Rogue One experience.
Yeah, it does kind of detract from where we're going. Considering like that happened before the movie, like before the show timeline, basically. So they left her behind a few years ago, according to Jin in the movie.
Right. But we don't know what that we get very little of Jin Orso and what her motivations are, and she seems to go very quickly from I don't know if I want to be a part of this to all right, let's do it.
Yeah.
Uh, versus Andor now, and again, it's what Nick said. It's the difference of a movie versus 24 hours of TV show.
Yeah.
But the 24 hours of TV show, you understand how Andor goes from I don't know if I'm a revolutionary to all this of somebody who's willing to sacrifice his life for the better of the rebellion.
Yeah. Yeah, Nick, I do wonder here. I know that the original story of the plan for Andor was 5 seasons here. I wonder if in the 5 season version we get the Saw Gerrera, Jyn Erso, like single episode of television.
Maybe, probably. I mean, the way I would imagine it is those four arcs we got in season two were each going to be a season, right?
You wouldn't need more to pad it out.
Yeah, not necessarily, but probably would have been like that, right?
Yeah.
Um, I guess you would have saw more of Jin, or Jin at all if that was the case. Considering, I don't know if they were doing 5 seasons, would they all be 12 episodes?
That was the original plan. I can see them maybe saying, okay, maybe
This was going to be a 60 episode show,
that was the original pitch.
so they went from 60 to 24.
Yeah, because I know during season one, Gilroy and Diego Luna realized like if we're gonna maintain this quality, we cannot do it for this long. Like we will all be like work ourselves to death, basically trying to produce it at this quality.
Well, I think it was a good decision. I mean, we talked about that last week on our season/series review,
Yeah.
but I don't think the show dragged at all, and I don't think it rushed whatsoever. So if this was another 36 episodes, it probably would have dragged.
Yeah, for sure. And it does give me a different point, Phil. I do think you're right. It's like obviously like this is not intended to be the Cassian Andor movie. This is like the Jyn Erso movie. And then like if you spend 24 episodes with Cassian and like some of these characters meet along the way, and a lot of them are not showing up, so they wouldn't exist at this point in the real world. And you're getting like Cassian finishing his storyline with a bunch of randos he picks up on Jeddah.
Right. And again, that's understandable given the circumstances of how this played out. But that part made the Rogue One rewatch a little bit choppier. That is though I think entirely offset or largely offset by how much more rewarding the understanding Cassian is in watching Rogue One. It really helps explain his decision making and just the it also helps explain one of the things that in Rogue One was a bit jarring when I watched it the first time is you got Jyn Orso going to Mon Mothma and the whole council and saying, "Hey, there's an existential threat. We need to do something," and they say no.
Yeah.
And when you watch it the first time, you're kind of like, "Why? Why are they saying no?" But now that you understand the background of the different varying factions of what started a rebellion, you can understand why they're saying no.
Yeah, it's interesting, Nick, too, on that point, because you look at sort of like the last arc of Andor sets up the Rebel High Command sort of like in being very divided on the intel they get from Luthen because they don't trust Luthen. They think this could be a false flag operation and draw them out. And then like you see sort of like Cassian is still all in on this and he gets confirmation. And I did love the scene when we get the you get the meeting with Tivik recontextualized, especially when he's desperately trying to find out. Galen Urso sends you where he's getting like this is the information he got from Clay, and now he's trying to fact check it basically as fast as he can before stormtroopers catch him.
Yeah, it really it leads right in perfectly, just like they said it would, similar to how Rogue One led perfectly into A New Hope.
Yeah.
And and what um and what Phil was talking about with the Rebel Council or the High Command saying no, it's like when you're watching Rogue One, it's almost like they assumed you watched the first two seasons of Rebels at that time, where now it's because that is kind of known in Rebels how there's different factions that come together to join the rebellion. That doesn't really happen till the later seasons, but you can see the faction from watching season one and season two because you're dealing with the Ghost Crew. But the audience hasn't seen Rebels, so let's get real. Like, of course we did, but like a good majority of the people who saw Rogue One, what did it make? $1 billion in theaters?
Yep.
I'm willing to bet 20% of that audience, probably less, has seen Rebels.
Yeah.
So now you look at it from after seeing Andor, which a lot more people probably watched, and it makes sense.
Yeah. It does make sense here. And Phil, what do you think about that scene we got with Cassian and Tivik right at the beginning here, which is where Rogue One sets us up for here, where one of the takeaways I remember we watched before the series aired, it was like, oh, like he's being ruthless, like he's killing this guy because he doesn't want to blow his cover here. Whereas here it's sort of like just feels like he doesn't want to do it. It very much mirrors Luthen killing Lonnie in the finale of Andor, where it's like, oh, like I need to do this because you're going to slow me down and like I don't want to risk like getting burned by you. So it's like he didn't want to do it, but he sort of like mirrors his like mentor and does it that way.
Yeah, the scene, the meaning of the scene is completely different now. Now that you got the context of Rogue One. So the first difference is rewatch it and you will see the reaction to hearing the name Urso. And that makes sense because he just got this information from Clea, where she tells him at the end of Andor, repeat this. No, I want to hear you say it, Urso. Then he hears the guy say Urso, he hears Tivik say Urso, and ears pop up. So that makes sense. And you also can understand more about why he's ultimately killing him. Like you said, very similar to what Luthen does, and it's his general philosophy that Luthen has from the outset that the only way to make this rebellion successful is to essentially become as ruthless as what you're fighting against. And ultimately, Luthen loses his life doing that, as is Cassian.
Yeah.
But Cassian takes a while in Andor to buy into that type of thinking. And by the time you get to Rogue One, he's bought into it.
Nick, anything you want to add on that scene?
Yeah, just forget Andor for a second and think of how important that scene is just in Rogue One alone,
Yeah.
where he kills him. It's the first time you've ever seen the rebels do something bad. And
Yes.
then you realize in his place, well, I don't know if you realize you're supposed to realize that's the director and the writers telling you this is not just the good guys. Like this is war. It's
Yeah.
not just like good versus evil.
Yep.
Yeah, it also immediately sets the tone for what. Okay, I'm watching a war movie, and I understand that the other Star Wars are called Star Wars, but this is the Rogue One is an actual war movie. It's Saving Private Ryan basically in a Star Wars world.
Yeah, and I do think like the touch points we get with Cassian throughout the movie, I do feel like a couple of them really stuck out, especially like the moment when he's basically sitting there on Edu getting ready to assassinate Galen Urso, and like he's sitting there like watching this happen and like watches Krennic mow down Galen's science team and Galen step up for them in the end here. And like that to me felt like Nick, like you watching that, like I can sort of see him thinking about like the Gorman stuff while he's watching that like happen, and it's like sort of like cause it to pause for a second.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I see the same thing. And this movie, if you think about it, is it's the beginning of the war. I mean, that's what it is. It's the first open attack of rebellion versus empire. There's been numerous little Saw Gerrera bombings, I'm sure, in Jeddah City and all over the galaxy, but this is the first unified rebellion or alliance to restore the Republic battle against the Empire. And it makes you, this movie and this show makes you respect the Empire that much more. Now, of course, they let this whole data leak get out, starting with Dedra all the way down to Luke blowing up the Death Star. But in reality, this shows you how feared they are. Like Cassian kills a guy in cold blood because if he finds out the rebels exist where they are, it's all over.
Yeah.
Just the existence of knowing where they are, they're dead.
Yeah.
That puts some respect on the Empire from my point of view.
Yeah, and Phil, it also reflects on that meeting in the high command, the one that Cassian is not in because he knows that it's not going to go his way. It's like where the high council, especially like the two senators, like Palmo, I forget who the other guy was, were like freaking out, like we have to stop now. We might as well surrender. Like they have a planet killing machine, like we're dead. And so like it gives you that fear they have in the Empire, makes it more contentious about this. We're seeing some of things the Empire's been doing the last few years.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The watching Andor gives you more context about the kind of massacres that the Empire is capable of. And what I particularly liked about Andor in something that doesn't get captured at all in the original trilogy, and the only way that an empire is able to develop like that is through a propaganda machine.
Yep.
And that's what they do with you see that with the whole Gorman arc.
Yep.
That a lot of these senators think, well, no, the imperial martyrs who gave their life on Gorman. And if that's the whole big arc at Andor where Mon Mothma gives her speech. The point of that Senate chamber that day, the Senate convenes to mourn these martyrs for the Empire. So I think it gives you a lot more context to understanding the type of war movie that you're watching.
And to that point, think of how a little throwaway line in A New Hope, when Tarkin says that he was just informed that the Emperor has, dissolved the council permanently, meeting the Senate. That was a throwaway line at the time. And think about how many great stories it's created. Because if he doesn't say that line, and let's just say the world of Star Wars, all that exists at this time is the first six movies, because that's what it was
Yep.
at the time. If you don't hear that line, we all assume when he transforms the Republic to the Empire that the Senate goes away.
Yeah.
We would just assume that because it's a dictatorship at that point, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's not the case. The Senate existed all the way up until A New Hope, even into A New Hope, and it created so many good stories where you can see senators like everything you see in Andor, pretty much, and some stuff in Rebels too with Mon Mothma. But all those storylines would not have existed if not for that throwaway line. And it's interesting how, like I said, you assume it's not that way, and it created so many good stories.
Yeah, and speaking of like throwaway lines, always like I see a lot of people on like Reddit sort of speculating like as a sort of throwaway that the empty chair in that meeting in the in New Hope was supposed to be Krennic's chair.
Yeah, I've seen that as well.
Yeah,
Maybe. I mean, obviously not in 1977, but maybe.
yeah, it's that's like a mental retcon for a lot of people.
Yeah. But I mean, I enjoy those little headcanon things that we have, like the old guy in Return of the Jedi. I like to assume that's Rex, you know?
Yeah, even though it's not.
Yeah, but I know because they actually gave that guy a character. But you see my point. Like little things like that, I actually like want to believe those things. It makes it more interesting. It's more fun.
Yeah, for sure. And Phil, what do you think about that scene we got? The like, obviously after the meeting and like Cassian is there. You know, Cassian's not in the meeting because he knows like from experience, man, there was like these guys not going to go for this. Like it was hard enough for me to get them to let me go find Timothy the first time. Like they're not going to go do this now. So like him realizing the importance of like sort of like make his own decision. Like we have to make a stand now after all he's seen. Like the senators have probably been in their little bubbles, not seeing this stuff. So I think it's interesting to see like we've all done these things to the rebellion. That line takes on a lot more importance.
Absolutely. It's goes to what I was saying. Now you have context for why those decisions are being made, why Cassian is rebelling against his own rebellion, so to speak, and it ties up the story nicely. Andor really does a good job of just telling a story about borrowing from real life historical rebellions, and that's the entire story, really. In my view, it's borrowing from real life rebellions and how they start, how they build up from the ground up, and it's never a lot of history will oftentimes remember it as one guy, the leader, but you don't get to the leader without the little guys to build up the rebellion.
Yeah, Nick, what do you think about like that scene we got like at the end there, where like when the council says no, we're not going there, and then Cassie's not in the meeting, he's got Melshi and all of his guys with him, and says like we're going, like we've done bad things in this rebellion, but we have to see this through. So what do you think about that scene recontextualized?
That scene makes a lot more sense now. Like I didn't not believe it, but he's like, "Oh, we've all done bad things." I'm like, we don't get to see those things now. And now, and after seeing Andor, of course, we don't see all of them for all those characters, but after watching Andor, I've seen those bad things.
Yeah,
I've seen the things that they have done, and I also understand the council's point of view. I keep calling them the council, you know what I mean?
high command, yeah.
Yeah, High Command. I understand their point of view. Think of all the secret meetings they had to have, and Mon Mothma and Luthen, and dinner parties and weddings and all these secret things just to talk about funding and financing and all these secret meetings just to get this thing to where it is now. And remember, like I said earlier, if one person finds out where they are, it's over.
Yes.
Forget the Death Star. Even without the Death Star, they send the fleet there, they're gone. Done. All of them dead,
Yeah.
arrested, both, whatever. So I understand their point of view. It's like we worked so hard to build this thing that are we really going to lose it over some rumor? I get it. And then at the same time, it's, well, we built this thing. We spent so much time building it. Are we not going to do something when we have a lead? I see both sides. I do.
Yeah, I do. And I do also want to point out, Nick, that like I think seeing Cassian's death scene, I think does also very interesting the way the shot visually kind of mirrors the shot that Bix and their kid end the show on, where like they're looking at the sunrise, where he's seeing his sunset, he's opening his eyes at the end to see the end. Like that's a crazy parallel there.
And it is, and it's a great, great, great thing that looking back to 9 years ago that they didn't have them kiss on the beach because they could have done that. They could have easily done that, and the movie would have been probably just as good.
Yeah, Cassie's
But them not doing that created the whole thing that you see in Andor with Bix and the kid, and how he still obviously has feelings for Bix, and Bix still has feelings for him, but they feel as if it's better that they're not together right now for the sake of the rebellion. So it's not a matter of like if he were to kiss Jin, like you can kind of that's a big plot hole there then.
Yeah, Phil, I feel like they do like the body language whole like tells up on this one where it's like now it's like you see it more like oh like this is like somebody I've grown close to as a friend and now like we're dying together for our cause opposed to like the romantic entanglement many assumed it was before the for start seeing the Andor show.
Yeah, I still think you could read it romantically ish, but Andor gives better context to that. The introduction of Bix and Cassian's child unfortunately doesn't jive that well with Rogue One, in my opinion. I get why they did it, but it doesn't jive that well because you would think that there would be a some reference to the Bix or some thought about Bix. But I guess you can use your imagination too as a viewer and say, I wonder what Cassian's thinking about in this moment.
Yeah, I was always thinking about her at that point. And I will say also, Nick, it's been established in the show Andor, like Cassie is definitely a bit of a player where like he's like willing to turn the charm on when he feels the need to. Like we saw the premiere arc of Andor 2, where when he's like basically flirting with the like rebel spy that's in there with him. Like on the planet with still in the TIE fighter, like, and I could see him like kind of like he's not attached, basically living in a frat house for a year with K2SO and Melshi, so like he might be like like down for a fling if it came up to it.
Maybe, but I'm not sure I necessarily agree with the Bix thing not being showing up in Rogue One. I think you don't really know because when it's Rogue One, after seeing that finale, especially in Andor, it's go time. There's no time for him to sit around and think about Bix. He's sprinting from planet to planet, dealing with Saw Gerrera and explosions and going to kill Galen Erso and to going to Scarif. Like, there's no time to sit around and think about Bix.
No, that's true.
If anything, he's might
And
be the guy why he's
he
flat.
doesn't know about and he obviously doesn't know about his kid. Like, he has
Yeah,
no idea the kid exists.
yes. All right, so a couple other things I want to touch on here, bounce on character front here. The cat, Nick, I know you had a point you wanted to make on the Cassie and K2SO relationship, so I'll let you take the floor on that.
Yeah, I just think that the world seems to think that they're best friends, and after watching Rogue One again and seeing the finale in Andor, especially the last couple episodes that he was in, I don't think they're friends.
Yeah.
I think Cassian's very much annoyed by him and just puts up with him. Thought he was just going to be like, oh, we should use this droid because it's powerful, and then now he's just like, oh God, this guy's annoying.
Yeah, Phil, the way
From I want to believe they're friends, but watching it again, they're not. He's like mean to him. Seems like Kay is trying to be nice and cares very much for him, but he doesn't really care that much.
Yeah, the way I look at it, essentially not just K2SO, it's like the crew he picks up, whether it's Jyn Erso or the Guardians from Jeddah and Bodhi, the way he looks at that crew, Phil, I feel like he's like the dad dealing with a bunch of like teenagers who are about to like try beer for the first time. And like he's like, why do I have to manage these children when I have more important things be going on?
Yes, agreed. I would say that with K2, there does seem to be in a lot of the newer Star Wars properties, they're showing you kind of a bias against droids. And
Yeah.
I think Cassian has is one of those doesn't really view droids as equals type of people. So I think that's kind of what you see with the he's annoyed by him. Um, but yeah, the droids are they're an interesting kind of subset of character in Star Wars because you know they're human like, but they're not human, so they don't get treated as humans by a lot of the characters.
I will say though, Nick, all the K2SO humor still lands very well going through here. Like the same attitude he's showing you in Rogue One is the one he's carrying through the movie. Like I did love the scene, especially when like Jin shoots one of the Imperial droids and like he walks in behind. He's like, "You knew that wasn't me, right?" Like that one got me like on the floor laughing.
Yeah, I mean, Alan Tudyk's great.
Yeah.
He's a great voice actor. He does a great job with Kay. I just feel like the relationship that we all assumed was there from Rogue One wasn't there in Andor. And then after rewatching Rogue One, I'm like, yeah, actually, it wasn't there in Rogue One either.
Yeah.
One good thing though that Andor does do for Kay is it gives you an appreciation of how powerful he is.
Yeah. I know Tony Gilroy made the point that like they hide K2SO in scenes. You see in the movie where he kind of tells him go to the ship, be ready to fly the ship because if he's out there, it's very hard for Gilroy to tell the story.
It was a cheat code.
Right.
Yeah. He's a cheat code here. A couple other characters from that carried over here. Nick, did Mon Mothma change at all, in your opinion, in this movie? I feel like she did not.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah, but no. Like, change in that I got more about her, absolutely. But I didn't really learn anything new, I guess, about her that I didn't know, but I got so much more Mon Mothma, which was, I think at least until the ending of the show, like the last arc, that was my favorite part of the show was the Mon Mothma doings.
Yeah.
Because I was so excited to see all that like rebellion stuff being built from the ground up and the financing of it and whatnot. But I guess I didn't really learn anything new about her in the show, right?
Not. I mean, like you got her family backstory, but like nothing
Yeah.
really like impacted what we saw in the movie, in my opinion, that much.
No, not really. Like, I guess she has a soft spot for Cassian, I guess is the only thing, but they didn't really use that much in the movie.
No, because I mean they used that more in the last arc
Uh,
of the show than they did.
Yeah.
you do learn about how much she sacrificed. I mean, you assume that she sacrificed a great deal, but it's not just political power. She's also sacrificed her family.
Yeah.
Uh,
We don't really
not
know what
sure.
happens to the daughter.
No, you don't know, but I think it's an assumption that she's cut off communication with her,
Yeah.
given that the daughter is now part of this powerful inner empire circle.
She's in a crime family.
Yeah.
Yeah, but a crime family that is friendly with the empire. Those dinner parties are always attended by high-ranking imperial people.
Yeah. All right. That's true. On the Mon front, I don't think much changed there. Same with Bale. And I think Saw the Rhydonium helps the Saw storyline, in my opinion, because like it shows you how like whacked out of his mind he is at that point of the time.
Back to the Bale really quick. Just
Yeah.
he only really had a few lines in the movie, maybe even just two, I think, or one.
Yeah, I mean he's just standing in the background for,
Yeah.
and then he says later I'll get out.
The line that he says in the movie, which I appreciate because it makes sense as to why Leia's looking for Obi-Wan Kenobi in A New Hope. It's a very poorly written line.
Yes.
And he just starts talking about how he served me well in the Clone War. Like it's just completely forced to just like say, audience, we're talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi, but we're not going to say Obi-Wan Kenobi's name.
Yeah, that to me like felt like that was part of the original script.
Perhaps,
Was
yeah,
right.
I think so. It's not a good line, and it's like I think it's his only line. I really think it is.
It's literally his only and he talks about it's very stilted dialogue.
Yes.
Because it's like they tried to mirror the original like story, like dialogue from the message too much.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think of that, but yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
And Nick saw the Rhydonium, what we learn about in Andor, like what he's breathing in, like makes sense why he's such a whack job in this movie.
And he was a whack. He's been a whack job since the Clone Wars when his sister died. It's just getting worse and worse every time he pops up.
Yeah, now he's just like perpetually high.
Yeah, he's out of it. He's been out of his mind for the last 20 years, and now it's getting worse because we realize that he's just on drugs.
Yeah, he is on drugs, and it takes Jin showing up to get him out of the drug stupor a little bit, Phil.
Yeah. To get him back on track. I kind of I'm torn on whether I like that introduction of the to the character because on the one hand, it is an interesting character to have this radical, crazy revolutionary.
Yeah,
Uh, Introducing a drug issue to kind of explain that craziness. There's pros and cons there,
yeah.
but but it does help understand why he's so crazy, I suppose.
Yeah, the last one I want to get to before we sort of wrap up here is Krennic, because obviously we got a lot of Krennic in this movie, and we get a little bit in the show, and you sort of see like the desperation Krennic has here, where like coming in this movie, he's coming right off of Dedra basically blowing the Death Star plans and knowing that this out there, and he's panicking, and like throughout this movie, Nick, like he's basically being usurped by Tarkin. He ends up going to knows that Vader's on his case now, and like he's trying to clean up his mess the whole movie. Ends up like biting him in the ass because Tarkin steals the Death Star from him and kills him with it.
Yeah, well, looking at Tarkin in the movie versus the show, I guess I can understand why he's more. At first, when you watch the movie, you assume he's more. I don't know the word I'm looking for, like
involved.
aggressive, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Like an aggressive leader. He's not nice, if you will. But I thought that was just because he's part of the Empire. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But now I'm seeing that it's because of what transpired, it just transpired, and how it pretty much directly impacts him.
yeah,
And he's trying to save his ass.
yeah. And you do
Yeah.
feel for Krennic a bit, Phil, because like you see, like he puts all his work in for like it's taking him like 18 years to build this thing, basically, and like Tarkin's basically kind of coming in to be the guy, the group rider who just showed up at the end and like, puts his name on the top of the paper and gets the A.
Yeah, and it's also it's kind of uh what's the right word for it? Goes full circle, I guess. It comes full circle because Krennic essentially does that to Dedra in a sense. He takes her and kind of casts her aside, and obviously ultimately ends up imprisoning her. Um, and then as you get to a higher ranked Imperial person, that person does that to him. So it's an interesting full circle moment because you see how, and again, this is a historical parallel in all of these fascist regimes. You have lower level people trying to impress the boss, and oftentimes they end up just having their accomplishments taken away from them and getting thrown aside.
Yeah, that's sure. Nick, anything you want to add on the Krennic front before we wrap up?
No, nothing else.
All right, so I promised the audience last week we do the full series MVP board for Andor, so I'm going to go ahead and pop it on the screen now in the YouTube version. Mike Phillips on YouTube. Cassian Andor as the top guy, plus 17. I think is our highest ever for a character on one of these boards, Nick.
I didn't realize that Karn was in last.
Yeah, he was making a comeback, but like season one undid him.
Yeah. Looking at some of the top players here and the bottom players.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
both people in the middle, people anyone between +1 and really +3 and -3 can throw away. But
yeah, a lot of these are just like one episode pop-ups here, but like
right.
top five, Cassian Andor, Bix and Mon Mothma plus six, then a three-way tie for 14, Luthen, Clay, and Saw Gerrera. And very, as I mentioned last week, very impressive Clay popped that much at the end of the show.
I don't even remember a lot of these people.
You want to throw a name at me? I can tell you like why they're here.
Blevin.
Blevin was the guy who was
I
running.
remember who he was, but I don't remember what he did wrong.
He was such an asshole in terms of like trying to like do his job poorly for the ISB. You got a
We
bad job for him because he was the one in charge of the Premor Ferric stuff at the beginning of the show.
we didn't like the Gorman front, but a lot of people did.
Now, they made mistakes. The
Yeah,
bottom,
I know. I didn't like them. You didn't like them, but a lot of people liked them. I remember Mimobi specifically last week was like, "You guys didn't like the Gorman front," but no, we didn't.
yeah, the bottom five of the show,
I like the arc of the Gorman front.
like the front themselves, made plenty of mistakes.
Yeah, obviously it's a direct parallel to the French Resistance, so that's
Yep.
from a historical standpoint, it's that's somewhat accurate telling. But
Yeah. So bottom five were Blevin and the Gorin front -4, Perrin at -5, Lieutenant Kroll from the premiere of season two at -7, and Karn finished dead last at -9.
There's one main character who is not on this list.
Who is that?
I'm trying to find it to make sure he's not here. Um,
I know Melchi's not there.
yeah, but there's a where is he? 1 second. 1 second. Let me just confirm that he's not here.
Yeah, it's a very big board, so
It's a he.
yeah.
Yeah, there's no Partigra.
Yeah, Pargrass did not like ping on the board.
Yeah, not at all.
I think he kind of went down at the ISB ship
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
because the ISB got a -3 for their
Yeah, so I don't like the list, and I'll tell you why.
yeah.
I don't like that we have the Empire, the Imperial Engineering Department, the Imperial Security Department, the ISB, all separate.
The ISB is separate. They're sub entities. Like
I get it, but like I feel like they should all be combined.
yeah. All
Because I
right.
know at the time they were separate. I get that, but I feel like later on, it's how we feel about the Empire in general, really.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about an appropriate fit where the Empire is in the +3 for the show.
Yeah, but interesting, no Partagas in the show and the board.
All right. So that's it for this
I'm
week.
happy to see. I'm happy to see my guy Nemec made the list.
He got on the board last season.
I was a big Nemec guy. I got him on the board, so I'm happy he's still there.
Yeah, he is still there. And Phil, I want to thank you for coming on. Really appreciate the time you joined us today.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. It's I'm really excited about this show. I'm sad to see it come to an end, but I'm excited for what it's going to bring to the future of Star Wars on next week's podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Phil mentioned, next week we are going to talk about the effect Andor could have on Star Wars going forward. Peely back with us for that conversation next. We have fun time indeed.
Absolutely, I'm excited to have that conversation.
Yep. And absolutely. And one more time, if you have found social media, I'm going to do that.
At Sky Guys Podcast all over, and email us at skyguyspod.
Yep, you can also follow me on social media at mphillips331. It's MPHILIPS331. This is over the Just on the Suffering podcast. Getting ready for the NBA Finals here. The Thunder are playing a team from the East. We are still waiting to see whether it's the Knicks or the Pacers in all likelihood, but all likely Indiana. But that's going to be in the feed on Just on the Suffering this week. We'll be back next week for our final Andor coverage as we talk about the Andor effect on Star Wars. But until then, may the Force be with you.